You're listening to episode 95, December 15th, 2019. Join me, Animal Naturopath Dr. Kim Bloomer, host of the Doggone Truth podcast, where I don't whitewash, I just speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. It's natural, it's raw, it's the bone-a-fide truth. Can you dig it? If you really want to dig in, then go to www.doggonetruth.club. Hello, I'm Dr. Kim. I'm your host. And this is going to be the last podcast I record for 2019. I'll start back up in the second week in January so that we'll have a couple of weeks a break for the holidays, but I'm sure I will be sharing some of the past podcasts from years gone by that you can listen to if you get on a listening binge, or go back and listen to the other 94 shows that are on this podcast. At any rate, this time I want to share with you a very Mastiff Christmas. This is the reason, this dog, Shadrach, is the primary reason that I got into natural whole health for animals and for people, because I do have my degrees in both. And it was interesting to me is that I was just in the middle of the night last night, was awake and was thinking about this, and I was going to do something different, which that podcast will be recorded in the new year. And it was just striking to me that we're coming up on the very day that I got Shadrach 20 years ago. It's hard for me to even think about that. 20 years ago, on December 18th, 1999, we got this dog. Now, it happens to be that my brother's birthday, my really good friend Bree's birthday, and also it was my grandmother's birthday. So it's a special day, and yet 20 years ago, what happened was really sad, and I haven't shared this whole story, not on this podcast or my previous, not even in my book, Animals Taught Me That. The full story, the full surrounding story to how Shadrach came to be and how he's in our lives is in my book, but I also recorded it as a podcast. I will link it in another podcast that centers around Christmas called Mmmm Good that people really loved last year, and it was also with Shadrach as the main star in that one. Shadrach is a Neo-Mastiff, and you wonder, where did you get that name? Well, a lot of people know there's a band with that name, but it comes out of the book of Daniel, the prophet Daniel, in the Old Testament of the Bible. And originally their names were, of course, Daniel's name was changed to Belteshazzar. Then there was Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Hananiah, the king of Babylon, changed because they were taken into captivity. The Jewish people were taken in, all of Israel was taken into captivity by Babylon, and they renamed those that they wanted to serve in the royal courts, trying to get them ready for their society. So they changed their names to Babylonian names. So Hananiah's name became Shadrach, and Mishael's name became Meshach. Now you know where I got those two dogs' names from. And Azariah's name became Abednego. So I used to call Shadrach Hananiah sometimes. You know, it's funny, I have nicknames for all my dogs. So this particular story really is impactful to me because he really was my through the fire dog, because they went through the fiery furnace, came out with not only not smelling like smoke and perfectly alive with every hair on their head and clothing intact, but not smelling like smoke. They came through the fire and were saved out of that fiery furnace. So Shadrach's name was originally Shadow when he came to me. And I just thought, what a boring name. I'm sorry for those of you who have dogs named that. It's no slam on that. It's just that I like to have little different names. Of course, I have one named King now, but that was his name when he came to me at 13 months, and I didn't want to rename him. And it's perfect with him having the name of the King, because I think of King Jesus. So right at this time of year is just really, really special time of year for those of us who believe in Jesus as our Messiah. So I wanted to share this particular story because Shadrach really was the epitome of so many things to me. And I don't, like I say, share this so in depth in my book, this particular 1 week time frame when we first got him. I do share that I wasn't real sure that I wanted him, but what had happened prior to it and how he came into our lives, I say in the book that there was a tragedy. What had happened was, right after Thanksgiving of that year, my cousin, who I was very close to, grew up with, And my husband and I hung out with her and her husband for a while, just kind of how you move in and out of hanging out with somebody. And she was a mom at that time. Well, she was a mom and married. Her son was 12 at the time, and I think her daughter was, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, something like that. And because of a situation that happened in her home, and she was out she got her car stuck on this dark road in the mountains, and then cell service wasn't as great back 20 years ago. And somebody came upon her whom she thought was going to help her, but instead he took her life. And to this day, we don't know who he is. The FBI never found him. So it is really sad and tragic time. And so my whole family came from primarily out of California and around New Mexico, but various places came from all over to come be together to say goodbye to her at her funeral. And during that process, we were getting together in groups of us. I had a cousin staying with us during that time, and we were going out. We went out to the place where she was found, and it's a popular site, even though it was dark winter night, very cold. If you were out in it without protection, chances are you would pass from hypothermia. So we went out there and we went out to eat together. And in our course of conversation, my aunt, who happens to also be the same age as me because my grandma had her last child at the same age, her two oldest daughters were having their first children. So it was interesting that we were all born within a 4-month period of me being first in August, and then my cousin was in December, but my aunt was in November. So they were right around the holidays too. And my aunt mentioned that because I had been 11 months since I had had Fridge. Fridge had died. My golden retriever had died in January 18th of that year. So interesting that we got Shadrach 11 months to the day after Fridge died. And it was a weekend, and my husband and I drove to another city that's a neighboring city, maybe 45 minutes away, to look at Shadrach and see if we wanted him. Although I had gone out shopping and bought all the stuff that you need for a dog, didn't have a lot of the stuff and have anything set up for puppies or anything. And I wasn't one to buy a lot of toys and do all that with dogs. It just wasn't how I grew up, and I guess it just wasn't something I thought of, and it wasn't what a lot of people did even then. At least I didn't. Fridge was the one who kind of cracked the door open for me into natural health. I started reading on that for animals. I'd already done it for humans, but for animals. But Shadrach came. And boy, he thundered into my life. He was great, big, and larger than life in personality. Although when we first met him, he was pretty shut down emotionally because of all the stuff he had gone through. And like I say, you can listen to that podcast and hear that story about him. But he was about 4.5 months old. We never did know his exact birth date, so we celebrated it in August because when we got him, we were told he was about 4.5 months old. So it was just really interesting to me that he came on that particular day that we went. It was my brother's birthday, but we all celebrated together the following day because I have a nephew whose birthday was that day, and he was little still, and celebrated both his and my brother's birthday on that day. Well, we got out there, and I just thought, wow, he is kind of cool looking. My husband immediately says yes, just based on his demeanor and looks. And I was like, I don't know. And the first thing I noticed was how stinky he was. So I was going to remedy that as best I could. And I did all the things wrong in the beginning, just like I've done with Ezra. And you would think after all these years of being a dog owner and teaching this stuff that I would do things more right. But I'm a stubborn kind of gal. And as you'll learn from the next podcast I do, I explain some of that there. I'm really stubborn and hard to learn. And every time I have a new one, it's just so hard for me to adapt because I'm still looking for the situation, the circumstances I had before. But the thing is, and something my husband's aunt always said to him, because she was the one who raised him, you will never find your future in your past. Your past you've got to let go. And I know Scripture even states in Romans 8:38 and 39 that, as Paul was saying, I'm convinced that neither present nor future. He was saying all these things that would not separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. Not principalities, not powers, not life or death, none of those things. But he doesn't mention the past. Because when you come to faith in Christ, your past is just obliterated by him just because you're made a brand new creation. So a lot of us get stuck because we're holding on to that. And I've been one of those. Anyway, so Shadrach came in. It was right during the holidays, and I felt like he was our Christmas gift. But oh my goodness, we did so much wrong that we wanted to feed him too much instead of small meals. And thankfully, my friend who was a vet tech also kind of shook me up and got my head on square. Because sometimes when you're too close to the situation, you can do those things, wanting to fix it. And I'm one of those people people that want to fix everything yesterday. Not tomorrow, not next week. It's got to be done like yesterday and perfect, right? That's totally unrealistic. So here's this Christmas season, and he hollered the first night like crazy. So did Ezra, by the way. Completely different kind of hollering, but Shadrach was so mournful in a howl that was so deep and sad, and it scared us. Whereas Ezra yodeled. it was kind of like a song. And I just was like, what were we thinking? Why did we get this dog? And because Fridge was like he was a golden retriever after all. I mean, he was the perfect puppy. He was the best dog. I mean, the only damage he did was in the yard, which I've never had one not damage the yard. They just do. They're puppies, but never in the house. Shadrach didn't either in the house. It was just this day that he had pooped in the house, and just so much going on with him. And I can look back now and know he had some kidney damage, and he had some other things going on because of his emaciation, starvation, his abuse. But that week, I remember when my friend shook me up that very next day when I was so tired, and I got a good night's sleep the next night, by the way. Because Shadrach slept in a separate room, but we had all our doors open, so it wasn't like we couldn't hear him, and our house was small, so we could get right there. He was in a crate, in his own room, and it was just scary to him, which I can only imagine, poor little guy. Except for he wasn't so little. He was a big boy from the beginning. He was as big as one of his friends, who was an Australian Shepherd puppy. She was probably, I don't know, 8 months or so when we brought them together to play together at the park, and he was only 4.5, and he was already as big as her and well on the way to passing her in no time, as he did all his dog friends at the park, which, by the way, were all girls. He was very much a lover of only girl dogs, and unless they were tiny little dogs, then he didn't mind if they were male. And then Shotzi, my Carolina dog that passed in January of this year, she only liked male dogs. She didn't like girls at all, of any size. So, anyway. So Shadrach, I remember that we decided to get him a toy. It just felt like he needed something. And he wasn't messing with the tree. We had the tree up, presents under. He didn't get into anything. I mean, I could put him on I would double up on this. It was like a big comforter. And he just laid on it while I was doing things. He didn't wander off. He wanted to play in the yard an awful lot, and so I let him. We had a grassy backyard and trees, and it was winter, but had been, from what I understand, was locked in a bathroom a lot. And so he just wanted to be out in the fresh air and playing and doing puppy things, and yeah, he was destroying yard stuff too. He just didn't do anything in the house. People couldn't believe it. I mean, he wasn't just damaging the house, quite unlike Ezra, who would if we let him go. So he was the first one I had really bought present for like that. We didn't even for Fridge. But for Shadrach, we went out and got him a toy. And we were opening our presents, and we got this one out for him and handed it to him. If I could have recorded his face. We weren't videotaping and taking pictures of every second of our lives back then. So the recording stuff was really a lot harder back then. It would have been precious to have seen the look in his face, like he actually had something. He knew he belonged. He was our first one that we bought. It was like having a kid for my husband and I, and to give him this present. And it was like, it looked like it had like the kind of legs you would use to play tuggy with some stuff that was a tiger, but not a lot of stuffing, just in the head and not in the whole body and stuff. And he carried that around with him all the time till he wore it out. And we got him a ferret, and then we got him multiple other toys, because he wouldn't totally eviscerate them right away. He did eventually, but he never ate the stuffing. He just would pull it out, and then we'd get him another toy. And eventually he had just a bunch, and he would always walking around with the toy in his mouth. Even in his old years, when anybody would come over, he would get a toy and have it in his mouth and be going, He was very vocal. They're a very vocal breed. Anyway, Neapolitan Mastiffs are. I remember that Christmas being like, wow, a special name for a special dog who came in and changed my life. He started teaching me about natural health then. I just didn't know it. He started showing me. He would run away from me when I went to put the toxic flea and tick control on him. Like he tried to hide from me, and eventually he would just surrender. I'd put it on him. He'd go out in the yard and roll every time. I only did it in season, obviously. I wasn't giving him the oral stuff. As I started to get into natural health and supplements, there were things he was showing me. This isn't carnivore specific. I am a carnivore. He started to teach me all those things, even what they needed to eat. And I looked into it and researched. Before we got him, I started researching the breed and was already had that planted in my head about so many people raw feeding them. I didn't think about that when we got him. I thought I got him this best, kibble. And he started to show me when he started having various health issues, in particular allergies. And that's when I paid attention. I thought, this dog has been through so much. But when he had that horrible situation at the emergency vet clinic where he had been, he had aspirated vomit into his lungs because he had had an allergic reaction to the medication we had him on, because the veterinarian couldn't figure out what was wrong with him with his skin. And turns out he was allergic to the new paint in our house that I had painted with. So we were able to remedy that with just a very natural and nice approach and not let him lean against the walls. He leaned against everything. When he went to the emergency clinic, they gave him more antibiotics and also manhandled him. He obviously was trying to bite them, scared him. So held him down, put a catheter in his hind leg, and it swelled up because they put the tape on too tight, which angered both his regular vet and myself, of course. And that's when I decided I'm going to go further with this one. I'm going to look into a better approach for him. At that time, he was almost 4, and I said, I have to do this. And that's why I'm podcasting for the last 15 years. That's why I became an animal naturopath. That's why I had animal naturopathy online school with my colleague and friend, Dr. Jeannie Thomason, and a podcast. We started the podcast first before we had the school, and then repurposed some of that really intense content into that school, which we closed last year. Partnerships are difficult at times. So anyway, all of that because of him. And for me, I look back and I think, what better gift? What better gift of everything that he gave to me and taught me and was a joy the rest of his life. It wasn't perfect, and he struggled with health issues his entire life because of his poor start and some of the choices I made that were conventional based on what I knew. And I remind my friends when they get so upset and go, oh my gosh, I never knew that. I had a friend recently who said she didn't know that rain can hurt their ears, so that's why dogs often don't want to go out in the rain. Depends on, there's a lot of science out there about that. And she got real upset with herself thinking I've pushed them. And I said, yeah, but you didn't know. So if you didn't know, it's not like the worst thing you know now. So you can't look back and regret that. You go forward and help others learn, and yourself, you will progress from there. And I'm sure your dog still loves you. So it's just that for me, this dog was so impactful. And what's interesting, I'll link to his memorial page on my website, the amount of love and outpouring that came to us as a result of this dog helping them all. So many people learned about natural health for their dogs because of him. I blogged, Shadrach blogged for me. I typed for him, but it was all on my blog in his presentation. And so many people felt that they knew him, even though they had never seen him in person. So I just wanted to share that with you to say he was a very Mastiff Christmas that has changed my entire life. And every dog that has come since have become major teacher dogs because I'm paying attention because of Shadrach. Fridge started me because I loved him, but I was still stuck in all of my horrible selfishness. I started to pay attention because of him, but when Shadrach came, I said, there's no way I'm not going to help others from what I'm learning from this, because Shadrach deserved it, and I know other people's dogs do as well. So my hope is that you will have a really very mastiffly Merry Christmas, and that you will start out the new year right. I'm starting out with a bang and into a class in journaling and also a fast. Hopefully there will be good coming from that I can share with you guys. And what I mean by that is share good that will help you in your own lives and in your own walk with in your own faith, and that with your dogs, so that they will have healthy and good lives. And I pray that you are looking at them and learning from them. And I'm going through a really difficult time with this newest one because he is the most challenging one I've had ever. And if I were to quit, what would I miss out on? And would it be fair to him? Those are the two questions I have to ask myself almost daily. I have not arrived, and I'm continuing on this journey together with you. So just remember, when we're surrendered to the Lord, He will do things in our lives that will help others and as well as yourself. And it's to know Him. So that's what I always say at the end. I wish you all very happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. And I'll be back in the new year. And just know that when you know the truth, when you know Him, Jesus, then the truth will make you free. Thank you for listening, and be well, yo. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health just as your soul prospers. 3 John 1:2. Visit my website at aspenbloompetcare.com to read the blog and the articles, to become part of my essential oils team, and just to learn more. The Doggone Truth podcast is a production of Aspen Bloom. All rights reserved and may not be resold or utilized in any way without express written permission by Aspen Bloom and Dr. Ken Bloomer. The information I share represents what I, an animal naturopath and an independent distributor of Young Living essential oils, have chosen to do to take charge of my own personal health and that of my family and pets. Information learned here is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not meant to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease, but rather to motivate you to make your own health care and dietary decisions and those of your pets, based upon your own research and in partnership with your health care providers. I encourage you to dig in and make your own informed decisions through your own personal responsibility, research, application, and due diligence. Thank you.